all of it, that's not how this works. That's not how the real world operates. Good people have to get together and demand that our basic freedoms be left intact. I mean, when the government is openly trying to put this stuff in place, it isn't a red flag. It isn't a pistol shot in the air. It isn't even 2 + 2 = 4. It is a clear message of that we are all in grave danger because we've been asleep at the switch and we've let incredibly corrupt interests take control of our society.
And you know, Alex, this is a game of boredom and greed. These are people who have so much money already. It's unbelievable. I mean, if people knew the resources that they have, but they're bored and they want more, and it's a game.
You just said it. The globalists want a technocracy. They want a worldwide computerized system that instantly fines and taxes and fees and tracks everybody. And the globalists, in all their public documents, abhor due process. Because how are they going to have a computer give you a red light ticket if it isn't an officer following law and due process with a summons, with a citation, where you get your day in court? How are they going to have a cashless society where they can just turn off your card or your face scan if you haven't played ball? The system is waging war against due process. Due process is all of our birthright. Police officers, military, everybody who's being asked to carry out this tyranny. It's your birthright that's being attacked as well. But the message I want to give people is this is bigger than Obama, bigger than Bush, bigger than Bill Clinton. They're just puppets that read off teleprompters by and large. This is about a global elite worldwide establishing standardized systems of tyranny and overthrowing checks and balances and basic protections of the population. And it's outrageously transparent. So for all intents and purposes, we're already under martial law. When the Congress is told, you don't matter, the UN gives us orders now when we launch wars. When the head of the CIA says, I'm operating domestically, which itself is illegal on record, and we're spying on you, which is illegal without warrants, and you don't have a Bill of Rights anymore, that is flaunting it in our face, an attempt to break our will, and all of this is martial law. All martial law means, in Encyclopedia Britannica, is that normal checks and balances and laws are suspended, and there is no habeas corpus, and military-style rule is put in place. And just as you mentioned before the break, Secretary of Defense is over all of this, is over natural resources, is over the Congress. Under this system, Congress is made completely ceremonial. That's why 2 weeks ago, the Secretary of Defense was able to get up in front of Congress, and Senator Sessions kept saying over and over again, you know Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11 says we give you the order for war. We fund the war. We commission the officers. Please. But first, let's get into high treason and beyond. I got up this morning. I hadn't seen yesterday's congressional testimony. I went to the Drudge Report. I went to Infowars.com, and I saw the Breitbart headline, Panetta, international permission, Trump's congressional permission for military actions. Then I watched, we have a clip of that coming up here in a moment, a 7.5-minute compilation and couldn't believe it. Then I went to C-SPAN and watched over an hour of the raw footage. It's worse than the Breitbart headline. They actually say in there and are belligerent to the Senate over and over again. He says, well, you know, the Congress declares war. The Congress funds war. The Congress controls and commissions officers. And they just say, no, the UN and NATO gives us our authority. So it's worse than just the president saying, I'm a dictator like Julius Caesar in 49 BC and invading Rome with the military. At least he was Roman. They're saying, we take our orders from the UN and NATO, and there's Congress under law. And by the way, Walter Jones of Carolina and others have introduced legislations in the Senate to begin impeachment proceedings against Obama. So this is a big deal, but it's getting almost no mainstream media coverage. There it is. Resolution calls for impeachment of Obama if Obama does not seek war authorization from Congress. And you can go to Representative Walter Jones' site right there, top link. And he explains that it is a high crime and misdemeanor, is treason. And then he sources the Constitution. And that's LaRouche's site actually copied over what he had said. But you can actually go to Walter Jones' own site and read that right there. Scroll down and I'll read you what he said. Expressing the sense of Congress that the use of offensive military force by a president without prior and clear authorization of an act of Congress constitutes an impeachable high crime misdemeanor under Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution. Go look it up. Whereas the cornerstone of the Republic is honoring Congress's exclusive power to declare war under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11 of the Constitution, now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives that the Senate concurring, that is the sense of Congress, expect in response to an actual or imminent attack against the territory of the United States, like ICBMs coming in, the use of offensive military force by the president without prior and clear authorization of an act of Congress violates Congress's exclusive power to declare under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution and constitutes an impeachable high crime and misdemeanor under Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution. We actually have a copy of that bill that I covered on the radio today. It is there. The Senate's now signed on. We're going to play you a clip of that. Then we'll get into some of the other news on that front. But here are some of the amazing exchanges that took place yesterday that are unprecedented. Even when Lincoln basically set himself up as a dictator and arrested members of Congress, he wasn't doing it under the pay of foreign powers. This has never happened in 235 years of this country. This is espionage by foreign agents.
We worried about international legal basis, but nobody worried about the fundamental constitutional legal basis that this Congress has over war. We were not asked, stunningly, in direct violation of the War Powers Act, whether or not you believe it's Constitution. It certainly didn't comply with it. We spent our time worrying about the UN, the Arab League, NATO, and too little time, in my opinion, worried about the elected representatives of the United States. Do you think that you can act without Congress to initiate a no-fly zone in Syria without congressional approval?
You know, again, our goal would be to seek international permission, and we would come to the Congress and inform you and determine how best to approach this, whether or not we would want to get permission from the Congress. I think those are issues we would have to discuss as we decide what to do here.
Well, I'm almost breathless about that, because what I heard you say is we're going to seek international approval, and they will come and tell the Congress what we might do, and we might seek congressional approval.
No, well,
I want to just say to you, that's a big dish. Wouldn't you agree? You've served in the Congress.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree that that's would be pretty breathtaking to the average American? So would you like to clarify that?
But I've also served with Republican presidents and Democratic presidents who have always reserved the right to defend this country if necessary.
Hit pause. Back it up about 10 seconds, and it goes on and on. I watched an hour of this morning. And notice, they say, well, we might seek it if we feel like it. Last year, Obama launched the Libyan war, and we have links to that in our articles, to his statement. He said, look, I don't need Congress. I have the UN. So he's not just saying as president I can do this, which is treason. He's saying I have the UN, I have NATO. And it goes on, and the senator is like, well, I'm breathless. I mean, our law, Congress commissions the officers. Congress funds it. Congress gives the president a declaration of war authorization and says, here's the mission. Now you're the commander-in-chief in real time making decisions within our authorization. Like, okay, go have war with Germany. Go have war with Cuba. But here's the war. Here's the aims. Now you execute with your war cabinet. Not just go in and do whatever you want. And by the way, the UN said we could. So let's go back to this unprecedented coup d'etat against America. And they're just seeing if they can get away with it. And if enough times they launch wars against Libya, Syria, whatever, and just Congress goes along with it, like Obama did last year, pushing this, and now they're doing it again, then the precedent's set. And that's what they're doing. Here it is.
So would you like to clarify that?
But I've also served with Republican presidents and Democratic presidents who have always reserved the right to defend this country if necessary.
But before we do this, you would seek permission of the international authorities.
If we're working with an international coalition and we're working with NATO, we would want to be able to get appropriate permissions in order to be able to do that. That's something that, you know, all of these countries would want to have some kind of legal basis on which to act.
What legal basis are you looking for? What entity?
Well, obviously, if NATO made the decision to go in, that would be one. If we developed an international coalition beyond NATO, then obviously some kind of UN security resolution would be the basis for that.
So a coalition of, so you're saying NATO would give you a legal basis, and an ad hoc coalition of nations would provide a legal basis?
If we were able to put together a coalition and were able to move together, then obviously we would seek whatever legal basis we would need in order to make that justified. I mean, you know, we can't just pull them all together in a combat operation without getting the legal basis on which to act.
Well, who are you asking for the legal basis from?
If it's obviously, if the UN passed a security resolution as it did in Libya, we would do that. If NATO came together as we did in Bosnia, we would rely on that. So, you know, we have options here.
We have options, and Congress isn't part of it. You see, the private 6 mega banks that issue the currency and credit of the planet out of a black hole, out of la-la land, they are already telling Europe, you have no sovereignty, it's transferred to this private corporation that takes you into receivership through fraud. England has 80% or more of its laws made by unelected groups in the euro. And so it's the same thing. He's saying, I go to NATO, I go to the EU, I go to the UN. And here is the Senate and the Congress, who are the bosses, who we elect, America. And they're going, you don't go to us? And they're like, no, we go to NATO or the UN. And the senator's like, come on, this is going to be a big issue. And Panetta and everybody just says no. And the general behind him sitting there with just total arrogance. And they had Dempsey on there saying the same thing, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. You can go watch the clips online. It is unbelievable. And they just say, no, you don't give us the authority. We might want to come to you, maybe, if we feel like it. This is how liberty dies, with a whimper, not a bang, if we let it. Our articles on this: Pentagon launches desperate damage control over shocking Panetta testimony. The United States has ceded control of its affairs to international bureaucrats, and they spin it and go, well, it was misinterpreted. We want the UN to give us the orders, and we think that's the authority, but we'd like Congress to get on board. No, Obama said last year, Congress has no say. Just like Congress is a bunch of traitors, because they're part of the problem, ceded the NDAA power to Obama that he demanded to secretly arrest and kill Americans and launch war anywhere in the world as a global declaration of war without congressional approval in the future.